Good morning, everybody. Thank you for coming out early to hear about Arbitrum. I'm going to give you my perspective on where we are in Arbitrum, and I hope more importantly, where we're going. I'll talk about some of the things that are in the pipeline and coming soon that I'm excited about. But let me start by talking about the present state of affairs in Arbitrum, just to kind of review how far we've come from that day back in the research lab at Princeton University, where it was just 3 people in a room. Right now, Arbitrum is the largest, most successful, and most decentralized of the Ethereum L2s. But you don't have to take my word for it. If we're talking about security or decentralization, the go-to source is L2Beat. And here you see the L2Beat security ratings for the top 4 universal rollups. And you see Arbitrum 1 there at the top. And the thing to focus on is the sort of pie chart on the upper left, in which L2Beat evaluates rollups on 5 different categories, and in each category rates that system as either green, yellow, or red. And what you see is that Arbitrum 1 is clearly ahead in this area, right? Arbitrum 1 is the only one that's in Vitalik stage 1. Of these major rollups, and also it's the only one that doesn't have any red boxes. So just looking at this visually, you can see that Arbitrum is ahead. The reason it's on the top of this list is because it has the largest TVL, but the reason that it's green and yellow is a better degree of security and decentralization. Just to go with some numbers in terms of the history of Arbitrum 1, it's processed over 360 million transactions in over 130 million blocks. It has over 12.3 million unique addresses so far, all those numbers continuing to grow. And depending on how you count, between $6 billion and about $13 billion of value on chain. In terms of total, in terms of daily DeFi trading, Arbitrum 1 is clearly number 1 among the L2s. But the biggest asset that the Arbitrum ecosystem has is the community. Arbitrum has a really welcoming and vibrant community, a community of developers, community of users. And that has been one of the keys to the success of Arbitrum. People want to be a member of this community. Okay, so we've come a long way, and Arbitrum is in a very strong position among the EVM L2s. That's where we are now. But I want to talk in most of my time about what comes next. That is, what is it that we can expect to be rolling out onto major Arbitrum chains over the next 3 to 6 months. One of the big changes that has happened is the addition, in addition to the 2 DAO governed chains, Arbitrum 1, which is a full rollup, and Arbitrum Nova, which has an external data availability service and therefore offers lower fees. Besides those 2 chains which are governed by the Arbitrum DAO, we now have the arrival of what we call orbit chains. These are application chains. They can be launched by anybody permissionlessly as a layer 3, and we're seeing an increasing number of announcements of orbit chains rolling out. We think that this app chain ecosystem is going to be really important going forward. Now, one of the core principles of governance, both in the DAO governed chains and the orbit chain, is pretty simple. Each chain decides for itself what its policies are going to be, which upgrades it will do, and so on. That means that for the DAO governed chains, the Arbitrum DAO will decide. And for an orbit chain that's launched by someone, then whoever that someone is, whoever launched or runs or owns that orbit chain, will decide. There is no top-down governance or law that anyone is trying to impose on the people who want to run first-class chains within this system. You get to make your own decisions on your own chain. And I think that's really important. Now, in terms of upgrades to Arbitrum that are in the pipeline, I want to talk about 4 major ones, and I'll take these one at a time. I'll talk about Stylus, which brings the EVM Plus model, the ability to run smart contracts written in any programming language that run much faster than EVM without breaking compatibility. I'll talk about Bold, which is the next version of the Arbitrum fraud proof and challenge protocol. I'll talk about Time Boost, which allows ethical capture by a chain of the MEV value on that chain. And then I'll talk about decentralized sequencing and the steps that are being taken toward that. First, Stylus. This, I think, is the coolest thing we've done in a long time on the team. And you can really kind of start in motivating this with the question everyone's asking these days: how can we onboard the next billion users? Well, if we want to onboard the next billion users, we first have to ask, how can we onboard the next million developers? And the way I think to onboard the next million developers is to make Web3 development much more accessible to developers so that there's less of a learning curve. People don't need to learn all kind of specialized tools, and so that people can use the same kind of battle-tested development tools and tool chains that they can use in the Web3 and legacy computing world. So you don't have to use sort of specialized experimental things. And that leads to a model that we call EVM+, which we deliver in Arbitrum Stylus. And the idea of EVM+, you can see here, is that we give you the ability to run different kinds of smart contracts developed using different tool chains, using Solidity, compiled into EVM bytecode, or using Rust, C, or C++ compiled into WASM, run them on a single virtual machine. So rather than taking anything away from EVM compatibility, we're adding new capabilities and new things that you can bring along. All of it perfectly interoperable and perfectly composable in just the way you would hope if you're a developer. Stylus is one of those tools that I think you really have to try to fully appreciate it, how smooth it is and how good the developer experience is. So why are we doing this? Well, where are the developers in the world? Solidity developers, there are maybe 20,000. Rust developers, 150 times more, around 3 million. C++ developers, around 12 million. We want to be able to reach those 3 million and 12 million, allow them to program in Web3 without having to live in a separate world. And we wanted them to be able to use the tools that are associated with those languages. So for too long, we've had sort of a divided house when it comes to Web3 development. You can be in the EVM world and have all the advantages of Ethereum and Ethereum compatibility, but then you have to program in Stylus and Viper and associated sort of custom tool chains. Or you could be over in the other world on other chains like Solana and Near, where you can program in standard languages, Rust, C, C++, and then compile to faster and more standardized virtual machines like Berkeley Packet Filter or WebAssembly. But what Stylus gives you is the best of both. And importantly, this is not two separate chains. It's not two separate silos on the same chain. It's these contracts running together, interoperable and composable, so that a user doesn't even need to know which one they're interacting with. And indeed, these contracts can call each other, and you can even upgrade from a contract from one language into another if you're using the standard proxy upgrade pattern. The level of compatibility that happens here in full composability. EVM calls WASM, WASM calls EVM, etc. It works the way you hope it would. So what is the status of this? The code has been published. There's a public DevNet, and as of yesterday, it had about 550,000 transactions in the first 12 days, about 195,000 wallets. This is the fastest uptake we've seen from any testnet on Arbitrum ever. And I think there's a lot of excitement around Stylus. This is in the pipeline to be deployed on the DAO-governed chains, should the DAO vote to do so, and available for Orbit chains as soon as it's been through the upcoming security audit, which I believe starts on Monday. All right, so Stylus is one major upgrade that is in the pipeline and probably within months of being available on all Arbitrum chains. The second thing I want to talk about is the Bold protocol. The Bold protocol is the new version of the Arbitrum challenge protocol, which resolves disagreements among Arbitrum validators about what is the correct evolution of the chain. And what Bold does, is it makes possible permissionless validation. Arbitrum already provides the guarantee that as long as any one validator of the chain is behaving honestly, you get a guarantee that the outcome will be correct and that you have a guarantee of progress. Currently, there's a permission list of validators, which includes a bunch of very large and well-known companies in the space. So unless you believe that all of them will conspire against you together to steal the Arbitrum chain, you're safe. But with permissionless validation, the guarantee we can give to every retail user is you alone with your laptop can force the correct execution of the Arbitrum chain. That's what permissionless validation brings. And this is something that I think is really exciting and something that other L2s are unable to deliver because they either don't have fraud proofs at all or they require a complex and expensive ZK proof to be done. So what is the status of Bold? The code for Bold is published. The security audit by Trail of Bits is published. That's all available. A public DevNet is coming soon. And this also is in the pipeline to, I hope, be available on all of the Arbitrum chains within the coming months. So the next thing I want to talk about is time boost. And I'm going to shift gears a little bit to talk about transaction ordering and MEV. This is a complex issue. It's an issue that many chains have struggled with. It's an issue that Ethereum is working through as you go, with a lot of complexity around proposer-builder separation and inclusion lists and all of those things. The L2s have an opportunity to do things differently, to have a larger and wider design space from which to choose in designing how MEV and transaction ordering is going to work. So the current transaction ordering policy on Arbitrum, on all of the Arbitrum chains, is first come, first served. That is, whichever transaction shows up first, arrives first at the sequencer, that will be the first to execute. And first come, first served has a lot of advantages. It's very simple and easy to understand. It's easy to implement. It has the lowest latency, the fastest response time of any possible algorithm, because as soon as something shows up, boom, it's in the sequence. And that's part of what gives Arbitrum the very fast response time that users love. So first come, first served has a lot to recommend it. It also has the advantage that it prevents front running because parties don't get to see the transactions of others until those are already in the sequence. So, but the disadvantage of first come, first served is that it doesn't capture the value of MEV or transaction ordering for the chain. Instead, what we see in practice is a sort of wasteful technical arms race among parties who are all trying to get slightly shorter turnaround time to get their transaction into that sequencer a little faster than everybody else. But what we'd like to do is, in an ethical way, capture the MEV that is available on the chain. So what do I mean by ethical? What I mean is that you don't want to allow the harmful and extractive types of MEV capture, such as front running or sandwiching, types that exploit users, but you do want to find a way to monetize the more benign types of MEV, such as arbitrage and backrunning. So that is the challenge. How can we capture MEV in an ethical way and a practical way without spoiling the things that people already love about Arbitrum's sequencing policy, such as the fast response time? So here are basically the goals we have in transaction ordering. You want fast response time. You want, obviously, low cost. You want to prevent front running by providing some kind of secret mempool type of mechanism so that users can't see the mempool that contains other users' transactions. Because if users can see the mempool and then insert their own transactions into it, they can try to front run other people's transactions. You want to capture the ethical MEV value for the chain instead of having that value dissipated in a wasteful technical arms race. People giving that money to try to get slightly faster network connections and slightly faster code. You like to capture that value for the chain as chain revenue. And then finally, you want a mechanism that will support decentralization so that we're able to decentralize the sequencing function without this MEV capture strategy getting in the way. And further, you want it to be the case that when you decentralize, the MEV capture mechanism does not become a re-centralizing dynamic, like you see in some other systems where even though in principle everyone can participate in practice, you see a sort of closed and small group of people participating in a protocol. We don't want to do that. Okay, so the mechanism that we've been talking about for this, and the mechanism that that we're building to offer to Arbitrum chains in today's world of centralized sequencing, we call time boost. And what it is you can sum it up in three phrases. First, fast, sealed bid, priority gas auction. Fast speaks for itself. It's a sealed bid auction for position within a sequencer block. The sequencer will make blocks very frequently, say 2 per second. And when a party submits a transaction, they can attach a bid to it. And that bid is a priority fee in the Ethereum sense. That means that your bid is a premium that you are agreeing to pay for each unit of gas that your transaction uses. And then the sequencer simply takes all of those transactions that arrive within the time period for some sequencer block. It sorts them into decreasing order by bid, so the high bidder gets to go first. So in that way, you can auction off the position in the block, but do it without inviting front running because you still have the sealed mempool. So that is time boost, and that also is coming soon as an upgrade that will be available for all Arbitrum chains. And we think that this, while maintaining an ethical MEV capture strategy, will be able to capture a significant amount of value for all Arbitrum chains. The last piece I want to talk about is decentralized sequencing. So I talked about sequencing. Currently, as you may know, Arbitrum has a centralized sequencer. People like some things about that, especially that it's fast. But of course, decentralizing that function provides a stronger guarantee against a misbehaving sequencer. And so in designing and developing the time boost mechanism, we thought very carefully about how to come up with a mechanism that was compatible with decentralization. And on the 11th at Permissionless in Austin, we announced jointly with Espresso Systems a research partnership with them to design and then build a decentralized implementation of time boost that will be compatible with the Espresso Systems decentralized sequencing infrastructure. So that will be available as an option for Arbitrum chains that choose to adopt it. Again, each chain will make its own decisions. The flagship chains, on the flagship chains, those decisions will be made by the Arbitrum DAO, but this will be available to all Arbitrum chains, and we're working with Espresso Systems. We're really happy to announce that we're working with that very strong team in developing this decentralized time boost mechanism. So decentralized time boost is the fourth piece that I want to talk about. Now, I want to sum all this up by just sort of going back to the beginning. I talked in the beginning, I gave facts and figures, charts about how Arbitrum is the leading L2 in the Ethereum space. And it's for a reason. It's both because of our amazing community, and frankly, I think it's because we've been leaders in developing the technical support to solve the problems of users and developers. So I've just given you 4 examples of the things that are in the pipeline that are going to continue to build that lead, not lead in technology for its own sake, but lead in technology that solves the problems of users and developers. That's a pragmatic approach we've always taken in building Arbitrum. And we're very happy to continue to work with our community as we do this. The road ahead is open. There are many options available to the Arbitrum community, and we look forward to partnering with that community. Let's build Arbitrum together. Thank you.